So I will read to the end of the canto, and then we'll go back and look at each sentence separately. All from his puissance born was now undone. Nothing remained the cosmic mind conceives. Eternity prepared to fade and seemed a hue and imposition on the void. Space was the fluttering of a dream that sank before its ending into nothing's deeps. The spirit that dies not, and the Godhead's self seemed myths projected from the unknowable. From it all sprang, in it is called to cease. But what that was, no thought nor sight could tell. Only a formless form of self was left, a tenuous ghost of something that had been, the last experience of a lapsing wave before it sinks into a bournless sea. As if it kept, even on the brink of naught, its bare feeling of the ocean whence it came. A vastness brooded, free from sense of space, an everlastingness cut off from time, a strange, sublime, inalterable peace, silent, rejected from it, world and soul. A stark, companionless reality answered at last to his soul's passionate search. Passionless, wordless, absorbed in its fathomless hush, keeping the mystery none would ever pierce, it brooded, inscrutable and intangible, facing him with its dumb, tremendous calm. It had no kinship with the universe. There was no act, no movement in its vast. Life's question, met by its silence, died on her lips. The world's effort ceased, convicted of ignorance, finding no sanction of supernal light. There was no mind there with its need to know. There was no heart there with its need to love. All person perished in its namelessness. There was no second. It had no partner or peer. Only itself was real to itself. A pure existence, safe from thought and mood. A consciousness of unshared immortal bliss. It dwelt aloof in its bare infinite, one and unique, unutterably soul. A being formless, featureless, and mute, that knew itself by its own timeless self, aware forever in its motionless depths, uncreating, uncreated, and unborn. The one by whom all live, who lives by none. An immeasurable, luminous secrecy, guarded by the veils of the unmanifest, above the changing cosmic interlude, abode supreme, immutably the same, a silent cause, occult, impenetrable, infinite, eternal, unthinkable, alone. We're reading this way? I think we can start this way.
All from his fusion and born was now undone. Nothing remained the cosmic mind conceive.
Yes. All, everything born from his puissance, his power, was now undone. Who is this he? For that we have to look back to the previous page, and there at the bottom in the last sentence there's King Asvapati is seeing the Godhead of the whole. We can say the cosmic divine, the divine supporting the universe. So everything that is manifested from and by that Godhead, and he's supporting it and containing everything within himself. But now King Asvapati has moved to a place beyond that. Everything that we have read today is beyond the universe, beyond the manifestation. A couple of weeks ago we had a look at Mother's map of the planes, you remember? And there were all the planes of existence, and right at the very top, just a blank. And I told you that when Mother was making that picture, she mentioned to Huta that when you pass that borderline that, into formlessness, this happens. Mystics and seers, great rishis, have had this experience. She says, for all those who go there beyond the manifestation, they have the feeling of something empty, a void, a vast emptiness. so I think that that is where King Asvapati has come now. Everything that's conceived, everything that's created is now undone. He's beyond that. Nothing remained. There's nothing left that has been conceived, that has been thought of and created by cosmic mind, by the universal mind that brings all this into existence.
Eternity prepared to fade and seed, the hue and imposition on the void. Space was the fluttering of a dream that sank before its ending into nothing deep.
So we must remember that this is Sri Aurobindo's experience, expression to us of King Asvapati's experience when he's moving beyond the manifestation. How does he experience it? Everything is dissolved. Even eternity. We think of time in the manifestation and eternity beyond it. But when he passes this borderline, even eternity, it seems as if that's going to fade away, as if it is a hue, a coloring, some kind of quality in the void, in the emptiness, in the vast emptiness. Something that has been imposed on that emptiness and that will disappear.
What did you say?
He says an imposition, a hue and imposition. So hue is a kind of coloring, on the void. And he says it's an imposition, something that doesn't belong to the void, that has been imposed on it in some way, and it will disappear. Space seems to us something fundamental, space and time. That sense of time and eternity is fading, and space too. He says it's like the fluttering of a dream. Fluttering, what birds do with their wings, something that's preparing to die, maybe an animal, it may move like that. This is a dream, as if everything, as if space itself is a dream that's sinking before the dream has ended. There's no real conclusion. It's sinking into the deeps, the ocean of nothingness. There won't be anything, not even time, not even space, not even eternity.
The spirit that dies not, and the God itself, seem myths projected from the unknown. From it all sprang. In it is called to see. But what that was, no thought or sight could tell.
Thank you. So King Asvapati could only make this tremendous journey because of his great faith in the spirit that dies not, the immortal spirit and self, and in the Godhead, in some individual form of the divine. But now when he's in this experience, these things, the immortal spirit within him and the divine being beyond, seem to be myths, untrue stories. Myths, of course, are symbolic stories, but when you say, oh, it's just a myth, you mean there's no reality underlying it. Myths that have been projected like a cinema image on a screen. They've been projected out of something that is unknowable, that cannot be known. And it's from that unknowable that everything has sprung, it has come out, and everything is called to cease, to end in that. It's the beginning and the end of everything. But what is that unknowable? No thought, not even any power of vision can tell what that unknowable is. There's nothing there that the mind can grasp, nothing that can be seen, only the sense that something is there, unknowable. Eve.
Only a formless form of self was left, a tenuous ghost of something that had been. The last experience of lasting wave before it sinks into a boundless sea, as if it kept, even on the brink of north, the bare feeling of the ocean whence it came.
Yes. So what is King Asvapati's experience of himself? He doesn't have any form anymore. Sri Aurobindo says a formless form. No? He often uses these contradictory phrases to help us to go beyond our ordinary conceptions. How can a form be formless? How can something that is formless have a form? But he's trying to convey to us King Asvapati's feeling that he still exists somehow, but there's no form expressing that existence. That way that he seems to exist is just like a ghost, something that doesn't really exist. A tenuous ghost. It means very, very thin, so thin and fine you can't get hold of it, like a wisp of mist. It's a ghost of something that had existed, but it doesn't exist anymore. It's just like a little remnant of something. And he says, maybe that's like the experience of a wave as it melts back into the ocean. The wave somehow has some form outside the ocean, but as it melts back into the ocean, he says that the last experience of a lapsing wave as it's falling down, going to fall back into the ocean, before it sinks into that boundless sea, a sea without any limits, as if that wave kept, even on the brink, on the very edge of nothingness, some bare feeling of the ocean that it came from. Whence means from where. There's a couple of places in Savitri where Sri Aurobindo gives some kind of expression of what this is like. If you have the chance to go into the picture gallery, there are the paintings of books 5 to 7. And in book 7, the next to the last painting, it's a painting that Huta made on Mother's instructions to somehow depict Savitri's experience of this, of melting back, of having no separate existence. It says just a violet trace. Yeah? There's 3 paintings there. They are my favorite paintings of the whole series of 472. the self getting more and more dissolved, more and more tenuous, and finally it's gone. Only that last trace of something that used to exist. And Sri Aurobindo says, maybe it can exist again. As long as there's that trace, it can come back into existence. But it won't decide itself whether it comes back into existence. It will be the supreme reality, the unknowable reality, which will decide whether that little trace or that sinking wave, whether it will come back into existence. Yuli, you'll read?
In vastness, rigid, free from sense of space, and everlasting is cut off from time. The strangely sublime, inalterable peace, silent, rejected from it, word and soul.
So this is King Aswapati's feeling about that unknowable reality, a vastness. It's brooding, it's not moving, it's as if in a kind of trance. There's no movement, even of consciousness. There's no sense of space. It's vast. There's no limit, no sense of space. There's an everlastingness, but there's nothing like time. It's cut off from time. There's a peace, a strange, sublime, unalterable peace. Nothing can change that peace. It's sublime, it's on a very, very high level. That peace is silently rejecting from it world and soul. It won't allow the individual soul to enter it, to come there, unless it dissolves. It won't allow world to exist. It's rejecting those things. This vastness and silence and peace will not allow any separate existence. Do you like to read?
I start companionless reality as well at last to his soul's passionate state. Passionless, wordless, absorbed in his fathomless host, keeping the mystery known, good, sealed peace.
Would ever pierce. None would ever pierce. Yes.
It grows incrustable and intangible. Facing him with it bloom the luminous sky.
Thank you. So what is he experiencing? What is he seeing? He's seeing a reality with a capital R, something that's really real. It's stark, something that's stark. I always find it difficult to explain what this word means. It means it has no qualities, it's just real. There's nothing else to be said about it. And it's companionless, it's one without a second. There's no companion, nothing else to be with it. Just this stark, companionless reality. All his soul's passionate search, he's been searching. We've been reading, I don't know how long, we've been reading this search of King Aswapati. In the legend, it says that it took him 18 years all this long, passionate search. So, at the end of it, what is there? This thing that can't be grasped, that seems to want him not to exist, that the world doesn't exist. He's looking for something that would turn our world into a divine world. But he's facing this reality that is passionless. It has no feeling. He's full of passion and intensity. There is no passion there. There's no word. It's just absorbed, concentrated in its hush, its silence, its fathomless hush. It's hush which is like a vast ocean which we can't measure how deep it is. The fathom is the unit of measurement that we use when we want to measure how deep water is. This can't be fathomed. There's no way of measuring how deep this silence is. There it is. It's keeping that mystery that no one will ever be able to penetrate, to pierce. That reality is just brooding there without movement, inscrutable. If somebody's face is inscrutable, we don't know what they are thinking. No? Something very mysterious. We don't know what is behind. Here there's no face anything. It's something which can't be read and it can't be touched. Intangible, can't be touched. It's just facing him, King Asvapati, with its dumb, tremendous calm. Immobile, peaceful. It doesn't speak any word. It doesn't express itself in any way. This tremendous calm. Joel.
It had no kinship with the universe. There was no act, no movement in its vast. Life's question, met by its silence, died on her lips. The world's effort ceased, convicted of ignorance, finding no sanction of supernal light. There was no mind there with its need to know. There was no heart there with its need to love. All person perished in its namelessness.
Thank you. It had no kinship. There's seems to be no relationship, no connection between that unknowable reality and the universe, all this that exists. It had no kinship. Kinship, the relationship you have with your brothers and sisters and your cousins and your uncles and your aunts, all the relations, however remote, you are somehow connected to them. That has no kinship with the universe. There's no act, there's no dynamism, no movement. It's absolutely still, unmoving, that vastness. So what King Asvapati is carrying with him, this question of life that's looking for an answer, to be solved. She can't even ask that question. It just dies on her lips. There's just that silence. She can't even utter the question. All that effort he represents in a way, the upward effort, the energy of the world. Here, it ceases, stops. It's convicted of ignorance. When the judge tells the accused person, we convict you of this or that crime. So it's as if that reality is showing to the universe that it is ignorant, that it doesn't know anything, that it has no right to exist. All that effort of the world stops because it doesn't get any sanction. Sanction is a very strange word. It's a word in English that has two completely different meanings. It can mean that somebody says yes, or it can mean that somebody says no. The UN disapprove of a country, they impose sanctions. They say, no, you mustn't do that, we are going to punish you. But also the Lord, the Emperor, he may sanction, he may say yes. So this universe finds no sanction from that of supernal light. There seems to be no higher light which says yes, there's some value, there's some significance in the efforts that are made in the world. It's as if, no, all that is meaningless, illusion. You have to let it go. There's no mind. The mind always needs to know. But there's no mind. There's no heart. The heart always needs to love. Not there. All person, all individuality perished, just dies in that namelessness. Name and form create person. If there's no name, if there's no form, if there's no sanction, all person perished in its namelessness. Lela.
There was no second. It had no partner or peer. Only self was real to itself.
Yes. So here Sri Aurobindo is reminding us of a sentence that comes in the Upanishads. He says one of the four great statements, one without a second. This is the Brahman, the one reality, which has no companion, which is all alone. So this is some kind of experience of that unknowable reality. There's no second, there's no partner, there's no peer, no equal to it. There's no other reality. Only itself was real to itself. Denny.
A pure existence, safe from thought and mood, a consciousness of unshared immortal bliss. It dwelt aloof in its fair infinite, one and unique, unutterably soul.
Thank you. So these are the only things that those sages who've had this experience are able to say about that reality. It's an existence, a pure existence. And it's a consciousness of bliss. So the formula they give is Satchit Ananda. Existence, consciousness, bliss. From our point of view, that's all that we can say about that reality. A pure existence, which is somehow protected from any kind of movement of thought or action. A consciousness that's only aware of eternal, immortal bliss, that's not shared with any other existence. There is no other existence. There it is, dwelling, living aloof, aloof from this universe, far away from anything that we know about, in its bare infinite, infinite without any features or qualities, one and unique, unutterably soul, alone, in a way beyond anything that we can express. We say ineffable, unutterable. It can't be expressed in any way. Prasanna.
A being formless, featureless, and new, that knew itself by its own timeless self, aware forever in its motionless depths, uncreating, uncreated, and unborn, the one by whom all live, who lives by none, an immeasurable luminous secrecy, dotted by the veils of the unmanifest, above the changing cosmic interlude, abode supreme, immutably the same, a silent cause utter, impenetrable, infinite, eternal, unthinkable, alone.
Thank you. A being, a pure existence, without form, without feature or quality, not expressing itself, mute, silent, knowing itself by its own timeless self. It's always aware, it's aware, conscious forever in its deep innerness, motionless, without movement. It is uncreated, it's not dynamic, it's not creating, it's uncreating, and it's uncreated, and it's unborn. It's the one. And it's by this one that whatever lives, lives. And it doesn't depend on anything else or anyone else in order to exist. The one by whom all live, who lives by none. Immeasurable, it's so vast, we can't discern. We feel there is no boundary or limit to it. It's a secrecy. It doesn't allow us to know its secret, its mystery. But it's full of light, luminous. It's protected from our approach, our knowing, by veils, many, many veils. These are the veils of what has not manifested, or the veils of the quality of not being manifest. There it remains supreme, above everything. It's above this changing cosmic interlude. The quality of the universe is that in it everything is always moving and changing, the cosmos. But he says the experience is as if all this Jagatyam Jagat, this moving universe, as if it is just an interlude, a short something in between, something that plays in between. or above, is that supreme, immutably the same, always the same. It seems to be the silent cause of everything, but itself is hidden, impenetrable, we can't enter into it, infinite, eternal, unthinkable, alone. We could say that this is a description of God as it is understood in many religions. But this is a spiritual experience King Asvapati is having of this one. And I think Sri Aurobindo would call this the silent Brahman. It's an experience which is overwhelming in its totality when it comes. But we shall see next week when we read the next canto, it's not the final experience. Out of this silence, something can come. But it's the experience which is the goal of many yogas. And it's such a powerful experience that when it comes, those who have it feel that this is the ultimate experience and often don't look for anything further. Here we see King Asvapati just waiting, Savitri also. She just waits. There's no personal will or intention left. So it is dependent on some other power whether another experience comes or not. Yes?
Why is this cause so secretive and mysterious? It says it's an experience which is really unexperiencable. It's so secretive, so mysterious. Why is it so difficult?
I like Sri Aurobindo said that at the beginning of his book on the Upanishads, he's given just a little sentence. He says that there's an unknown quantity which is the source, the cause of everything else. And in the Vedic and Upanishadic language, we call this Brahman. And it is unknowable to everything in us that is manifest. But since we ourselves are caused by that cause, there is something in us which can know it, he says, if in experience, if not by mind. So it's not our mind which can experience it. It's that Brahman in ourselves which can experience it. So those who've had this experience, they've had this oneness with the silent Brahman. It was Sri Aurobindo's first major spiritual experience and came to him quite unexpectedly. But then later, after many months, other experiences came which showed him that there's also a dynamic Brahman, and that these are two aspects of something which is supreme beyond both of them. These are the first two of his realizations. First three, there's the Parabrahman, there's the third one. And then the fourth major realization, he tells us, he's written it in a letter, which came to him while he was in prison in 1908, 1909. The spirit of Vivekananda came to him and showed him about the planes, all the many, many planes. And from that he understood that something like what he has called supermind, what the Vedas call the truth consciousness, must exist. So all those 4 experiences came to him in an incredibly short time, about 18 months, 2 years. But then he says in the same letter, he said, making those realizations real in the dynamic being took the rest of his life, many, many decades afterwards. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does answer, but I really have this question. Why is everything so mysterious? And I'll give a very simple example. A mother is never mysterious to a child. Never.
Yes.
Especially if it's on a good path.
No, so of course that's what comes next is the Divine Mother who comes close to him, embraces him, But it seems that this experience is very necessary. This is the experience that is called moksha, that this is very necessary to cut all our lingering attachments and connections to everything. That we can really only experience the embrace of the Divine Mother when we are not hooked up on anything else. So this liberation, this melting away of everything, this mysterious unknowableness has to come to free us from all that. I think that's perhaps when you say why, it is something like that, perhaps.
Shraddhavan, can I ask a basic question? A childish question rather. Why did Sri Auroville take the head of Savitri to express these supernatural experiences which are contained in the book? Why?
Somebody phoned me the other day, a gentleman who's reading this book, and he said, Savitri is Savitri. That is, in the story, it is Savitri who saves Satyavan. So he said, we are all Satyavan, and Sri Aurobindo has given us this book to save us. That's what he told me. There's a truth in it. No? Yeah. He did it to give a form and expression accessible to our minds and our intuition, our limited understanding of the truth that saves. That's what Savitri gives us. That's what she gives, that's how she answers death. She says, death, you give the truth that kills, that destroys. I bring the truth that saves. So, saves all of us from death, from destruction, from annihilation, from nothingness. That says yes to this world and everything in it. That says yes, it's come out of the one for a reason, with a purpose, with a meaning. What we are is not insignificant. It's not without value. It's not illusion. It has a truth. It has an underlying reality, which is the underlying reality of the unknowable one itself. That's all I can say about it. Anyway, now we have just 5 minutes left. We'll read these lines together. From the top of page 308. All from his puissance born was now undone. Nothing remained the cosmic mind conceives. Eternity prepared to fade and seemed a hue and imposition on the void. Space was the fluttering of a dream that sank before its ending into nothing's deeps. The spirit that dies not, and the Godhead's self seemed myths projected from the unknowable. From it all sprang, in it is called to cease. But what that was, no thought nor sight could tell. Only a formless form of self was left, a tenuous ghost of something that had been, the last experience of a lapsing wave before it sinks into a bournless sea, as if it kept even on the brink of naught its bare feeling of the ocean whence it came. A vastness brooded, free from sense of space, an everlastingness cut off from time, a strange, sublime, inalterable peace. Silent, rejected from it, world and soul. A stark, companionless reality answered at last to his soul's passionate search. Passionless, wordless, absorbed in its fathomless hush, keeping the mystery none would ever pierce. It brooded inscrutable and intangible, facing him with its dumb, tremendous calm. It had no kinship with the universe. There was no act, no movement in its vast. Life's question, met by its silence, died on her lips. The world's effort ceased, convicted of ignorance, finding no sanction of supernal light. There was no mind there with its need to know. There was no heart there with its need to love. All person perished in its namelessness. There was no second. It had no partner or peer, only itself was real to itself. a pure existence, safe from thought and mood, a consciousness of unshared immortal bliss. It dwelt aloof in its bare infinite, one and unique, unutterably soul. A being formless, featureless, and mute, that knew itself by its own timeless self, aware forever in its motionless depths, uncreating, uncreated, and unborn, the one by whom all live, who lives by none, an immeasurable, luminous secrecy, guarded by the veils of the unmanifest, above the changing cosmic interlude, abode supreme, immutably the same, a silent cause, occult, impenetrable, infinite, eternal, unthinkable, alone.